happens when people look at a map and they start looking at the data on top of that map is they're able to start making correlations that they otherwise would not have made perhaps through reading. I'm Robert Mugga, and for the last decade or so, I've been working on the risks facing cities, but also ways that cities are getting around them. What we have here is data showing every single refugee that's moved since the 1990s. 90% of them are living in the underdeveloped world. There is this sense in the West that somehow they're being flooded or inundated by refugees. Well, the fact is that when you look at a visualization like this, you see that the vast majority of people are moving really next door to cities in neighboring countries. If you layer on top of this map terrorism events as well as conflict-related violence, what you'll see is the vast majority of refugees are fleeing from terrorism and conflict, and they're not bringing it. What maps like this can do is help us challenge some of those myths that are out there that are propagated and repeated in some of our media outlets. Rising sea levels are going to affect virtually all cities on the coast, and there are a few cities that are going to be more badly affected than Miami. Miami is built on porous limestone, a swamp effectively. So at around 2 degrees Celsius rise globally, Miami is underwater. Mar-a-Lago, the winter White House, may be one of the first parts of Florida to go. Many people still are reluctant to believe that climate change is real. But as you scroll out from Miami and you look up and down the coast, you'll see that cities as far south as New Orleans, all the way up to Norfolk, Virginia, are also going to be affected dramatically because this part of the east coast of the United States is one of the most severely exposed to rising sea levels in the world. One of the visualizations that we have is showing fires from space over a 3-year period. Well, the blooms above and below the equator are really slash and burn agriculture, basically forests being cleared for livestock. The other concentration of fires that you see from space are really about gas flares, coal burning factories. So for example, in North Dakota, there is a cluster of gas flares from the fracking industry that generate the equivalent of more than 1 million cars on the road a year. And that gives you a sense of just the human-led changes to our climate. The light emission map is essentially capturing ambient light from space, and areas that are red are areas where we're seeing higher levels of light emission over time. And blue is where we're actually seeing lights disappearing. And what we see is a remarkable increase in light emissions in the most rapidly growing parts of the world, including parts of China. What's interesting also is where there's not light. So large parts of Africa, as well as parts of even Eastern Europe, you'll see are darker. And then you see areas where, in fact, there hasn't been a lot of population growth, and especially Japan. Even in parts of Japan, you see areas that are blue, suggesting that, in fact, cities are getting smaller and people are leaving cities, or at least the population's aging, and you're not seeing the same levels of energy consumption. Maps allow for a kind of communication that I think goes well above and beyond what we're able to convey orally. I've been struck by just how quickly complex messages can be conveyed, stored, and ultimately acted on through maps.